Nearly there. We probably have quite a few more that are going to turn up randomly halfway through. But according to my clock, it's half past. It's gone past half past. So I'm going to get kicked off. So let me first start by saying thank you so much, everybody, for turning up on what is a very, very cold Thursday afternoon. I do appreciate you all kind of giving me time to come to listen to me, and I hope that you're going to find the next hour or so useful. I am on here until you all go, so don't panic. I'm not going to boot you out at 7:30, and I do appreciate we all live hectic lives, and the internet isn't great. So if you do have to go deal with something or you do get booted off, don't worry, just pop back on as soon as you can. We are going to be recording the session, but it's only going to be me and the slides. Everything else we're going to kind of get rid of. There is a chat function that we're going to be using that I'm hoping everybody can see. Throughout the session, I'm going to cover some of the questions that a lot of people have kindly sent through already. So that's going to be like the first bit of the evening, and then the rest of it will be basically anything that I haven't covered or anything else you want to know. Then I'll kind of help you with. So I suppose introductions are in order. I'd get you all to introduce yourself, but we'd be here until tomorrow because there's quite a few of you. For anybody that hasn't met me, my name's Dan Horbrook. I'm the online safety officer that works in Lincolnshire. I spend a lot of my time travelling around schools, talking to guys and girls of all ages, all abilities in schools all over the county. We cover special schools, talk to year sixes and years 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11 in secondary schools. My job is to help people stay safe online. So I do talk about the positive side of the internet, but the main part of my job is to give children skills so that they can keep themselves safe online. And we'll be honest, you know, a lot of kids now, like a lot of adults, we use technology more and more. The other part of my job is helping parents, carers and professionals with the kind of things that they can do at home, the kind of information that we feel they need in order to keep them safe. So the session today, this evening, is basically going to be, oh, sorry, let me go. There we go. The joy of slides. These are the 4 kind of things that we're going to be doing over this session. Can I just ask, before I say any more, I know a lot of people are already, they've got their cameras off and they've got their microphones muted. Can I just ask anybody that hasn't already, are you okay just to turn your cameras off and just keep yourselves muted? And that'd be brilliant. It's going to be a bit weird for me because then I can't see anybody, but it's just as we're recording, we don't want to share anybody's information unnecessarily. So no, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. So when you first booked this, whether it was yesterday, last week or last month, we gave you the opportunity to ask me some kind of questions about online safety. I have a list of questions and very broadly, these are kind of the categories that we're going to be covering based on the questions that you kind of set. So the first section is going to be a lot around parental controls, what they are, what you can actually do, and whereabouts you can find information that's going to kind of help you set them up. There is going to be a little bit on strangers and on something that kind of makes grown-ups worry a bit called grooming. And I'm going to kind of show you the skills that we kind of teach children and young people in schools and the kind of things that we want them and you to kind of think about when you talk about this. And the other thing that we've had a lot of questions on is around bullying, which, as we all know, since the pandemic, since we're communicating a lot more online, a lot of negative behaviour has kind of been seen online, even, you know, as recent as like the European Championships, when a lot of players were targeted very unfairly just purely because they made a mistake doing their job. Okay, so I do want to just kind of say that my boss is here, Catherine. She's going to be monitoring the chat for me. She's going to be kind of making sure that if you ask any questions that I do kind of cover it. And please feel free, if at any point I've said something and it doesn't make sense at all, or you just want a little bit of clarity, or I've not answered that question the way that you want it to, please put it in the chat. And we'll have enough time to kind of cover that at the end. Okay, so with all this in mind, I do want to start by talking a little bit about parental controls. And one of the apps that seems to be mentioned quite a lot and it is amazingly popular, not only with children, but with young people and adults as well. And that is an app called YouTube. Now, I'm pretty sure that the majority of you will either love it, loathe it, or find it incredibly useful. YouTube, does have a place. But the problem with YouTube is a lot of the content is designed specifically for adults, and it's sometimes really difficult to sift through and kind of find the things that are appropriate for your children. Because while some YouTubers are great positive people, there are some YouTubers who the kind of messages and the kind of things that they film, we're not going to be comfortable with as parents and carers. So with all that in mind, YouTube has created a specific app for children so that they can watch the kind of things that they want to. So whether it's Peppa Pig videos, Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom, or just somebody playing with slime and toys, what you can do is download this free app, YouTube Kids. Now, it's available on iPhones, it's available on Kindles, it's available on literally everything that you can possibly think of. And what it allows you to do is to create an account so that you can choose what age you want for your videos, your children, you want them to access. Now, the problem with this is a lot of the videos that your children might want to watch may fall outside of these kind of age brackets. But what YouTube Kids will allow you to do is either allow the app to choose the videos for you, or you can pre-approve the videos. You can create your own list of things that you feel comfortable for them to watch, which kind of gets rid of kind of the inappropriate content. Now, I do have to say at this point, when it comes to parental controls, not all parental controls are 100% effective. It is not something that is technically possible to do. Because anybody is able to upload a video to YouTube, sometimes they can trick the system for a short amount of time. So there is a small potential that even through apps like this and some of the other parental control services available, that inappropriate content may come through. It is one of the drawbacks to the internet is there is a lot of adult stuff out there, but it isn't a common occurrence once we put this protection in place that they're going to be able to see it. So YouTube for Kids also offers the function where you can actually look and see what kind of videos they've been watching, which is a really, really handy feature. Now, if your children are a little bit older and you are concerned about kind of some of the stuff that they may come across, or if they are, year 5, year 6, so what, like 9, 10, 11, and you want to give them a little more freedom to experience some other content that's available, maybe around certain games that may not fall under these age brackets, sort of things like Fortnite, then what you can actually do is use the proper YouTube app. It does have an option to restrict content. So what this will do is it will try and eliminate sort of severely adult content that's got incredibly bad language, that covers issues around like drugs and alcohol, and certain videos that may not be appropriate because of what they cover and the themes and messages within. Now, YouTube will also allow you to see what videos have been watched recently. So through the app, by clicking like the 3 buttons or the 3 dots, by going to the settings, you can actually view the kind of bits and pieces. Oh, sorry, viewing the lobby. I've got Catherine on it, but no, thank you for the message. What we kind of find is that it can give you a bit of an insight into the kind of influences they have and the kind of things that YouTubers are kind of saying, which can sometimes be a bit of a problem for us because our kids will sit there with headphones on. They might be in their rooms. We don't always know the kind of things that they're seeing. So YouTube as a platform is really, really great. It's just trying to restrict some of the content and manage that kind of safety. So YouTube Kids does have parental controls. But one of the other things that can kind of cause problems are things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and to some degree, Disney Plus. Because Netflix has a huge amount of adult content, as does Amazon Prime, as does some parts of Disney Plus, it can sometimes be difficult to manage the kind of things that they see. When we talk about inappropriate content, one of the things that seems to get mentioned quite a lot over the past few weeks is a TV show called Squid Games. Now, there are games like Roblox that have elements of Squid Games in it. There are YouTubers that may reference these TV shows, so they're not necessarily inappropriate in the way that they talk about them, although the content within the shows is highly inappropriate for younger boys and girls. Now, because Netflix has a top 10, if we don't put parental controls on Netflix, there is a likelihood that our children may just look at the top 10, see what's at number 1, click on it and watch it. Now, Squid Games, I'll be honest, anybody under 15 probably find it a bit boring, right? It has a lot of very gross stuff, but it has a lot of really adult themes, okay? But that doesn't mean that they're not going to persevere, especially if some of their favorite YouTubers kind of mentioned it. What you can do on Amazon Prime and Netflix and on Disney Plus is create their own profile, and you can set that to be a kid, or you can set it for teenagers. So what that will do is greatly limit what shows they can and can't watch. Now, it might eliminate a lot of 12 rated TV shows. It might eliminate a lot of 12 rated films. So they may not always get to see the kind of stuff that they want to, but it allows you to have that conversation with them and for you as their adult to kind of make that decision. But one of the apps that we find gets mentioned quite a lot in schools and gets mentioned all the time as an app that parents and carers worry about is one called TikTok. Now, for anybody that knows, TikTok is an app where you can create short form videos. These are anywhere from like 10 seconds to 30 seconds and sometimes a little bit longer. It became really popular because people used to use it to lip sync and dance to certain tracks that had kind of appeared in the charts and stuff like that. TikTok is massively popular in both primary and secondary schools. And it is something that is massively popular with adults, especially during the pandemic when we had a lot of time to kill and we needed cheering up. There's a lot of really, really funny things in kind of TikTok videos. Now, the other issue about TikTok that we've kind of experienced over the last year is that not all of the songs within it and not all of the videos are going to be appropriate for children and young people. Social media is designed for adults. That's TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and to a degree, YouTube. It is designed for adults to share stuff, to kind of communicate. But TikTok are quite aware that their audience is quite young. And while it has made a lot of mistakes, they do seem to be doing a lot of work in trying to keep their users a bit safer than some of the other apps. One of the features TikTok has in order for you as the parent or carer to kind of manage their safety is a system called family pairing. What this allows you to do is to link your TikTok account with your child's, your son or your daughter, whoever. And what you can kind of do is apply some form of restriction to it. Now, these restrictions include things like screen time management, because if we're being brutally honest, screen time can be a bit of an issue in households. And that's as much for adults as it is for children and young people. And we all know it's very easy once you're sat on that sofa to just be scrolling through for hours and hours and hours. So you can actually set a specific time limit for them to use TikTok during the day. So it could be an hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, a bit excessive in a day, but it's your choice kind of what you set it as. It can be locked as well. So it means that once you set it, they can't remove that without you entering the password, without you changing it on your account, which is just a really, really brilliant feature. It does allow you as well to put it in a restricted mode. And this again is something that you can lock so they can't change it. Now, again, with parental controls, because in our questions that you've sent, a lot of you have kind of mentioned your worries about, I've put parental controls in place and inappropriate stuff still comes through. And like I say, it's not always 100% effective, but it does allow you that greater freedom, that greater sort of peace of mind that the majority of stuff is not going to be appearing through this app. Now, what I will say is if anything does appear and it is questionable, if you do not feel it's appropriate, if you think that it's somehow slipped through this restricted mode, you can report the content direct to the app and they will rectify it. It won't happen instantly, but it is a great way to help us manage the safety of the internet and the safety of this app. But one of the features I absolutely love in this family pairing system is the fact that you can turn off direct messages. Now, this is a feature that your children can do anyway. Putting it in a restricted mode, your children can do themselves without this family pairing. They can use the app to manage their own screen time, which is a really responsible thing to do. But the fact is, TikTok will only allow people who are your friend or follower, people who you've accepted as a connection, it will only allow them to direct message you, and you can turn that off. So you can set it so that nobody can send you a direct message, or only your friends. They are the only two options. And I think that's just a really, really great feature, because it just gives you that peace of mind that the messages they're going to receive are from people they know, and if it gets a bit excessive, they can turn it off, so they can still enjoy the funny videos in the app, and they don't have to worry about the kind of nonsense that people talk about. Now, the great thing about direct messages on TikTok, and it's very different in other apps, is that in your direct messages, that is one user sending a message to another user, you cannot send pictures and videos, which, as we know, in a lot of other apps, that can be a bit problematic. So family pairing, TikTok have like a massive section. At the moment, I mean, Natalie, that's a really great question. At the moment, if we're being honest, Instagram are a little bit behind when it comes to parental controls. Okay, they do not have these same kind of systems. There is kind of limits that you can kind of apply to Instagram, but they're not at this kind of same level. Instagram is owned by Facebook, and as we know, it's been in the news a little bit recently because maybe protecting their users hasn't been as high a priority as it has been for some other apps. So it is a shame. It's not something that is available at the moment on Instagram, but like I'm hoping that it's something that is maybe applied in the future, because it just makes a huge difference, and it does make the app feel like a bit of a safer place. Okay, now when it comes to apps, there are obviously things, you know, like TikTok has privacy controls, Instagram has privacy controls, and actually you can restrict messages through Instagram through the privacy controls, you know, to stop people who aren't your follower from messaging you. You can't turn off direct messages in Instagram, which is a bit of a shame. But I know one of the other questions that a lot of parents and carers have kind of set is about how can I use the restrictions on the device? You know, so how can I stop them from doing this or doing that? How can I manage kind of their safety when they're using their tablet, when they're using their kind of mobile phone? Okay, now the good news is that both Apple and Google have created a specific system that allows you to put parental controls on devices. Now, the one for Google is called Family Link. All you need is a Google account. It's a free email. Oh, brilliant. I'm glad to hear that, Natalie. It is an excellent app, free to download. And what it will allow you to do is that once you've verified your identity, it can do things like, you know, manage screen time. It can restrict the kind of apps that they can and can't download. And it's not only Google that do it. Apple have a similar system as well called family sharing, which is exactly the same. Manage screen time. It can control the apps. They can both set limits about ages and the kind of content that is available for children and young people. It is a really, really great system. And these parental controls have got much better over the years, and they are completely free. The only thing it's going to cost you is a little bit of your time. And on the Apple and the Google ones, you do need to verify that you are an adult using a payment method. So it's free, but they will use kind of like a credit or a debit card, some form of payment method, in order for you to verify who you are. But that just means, and as you can probably see in the chat, my boss is starting to put up some places that you can go to get more information on these parental controls. It's just a really great system. Now, the other question is, of course, and here is a link as well to some of the places you can go to get information, is how can I filter content in my household? Now, these apps, the family sharing and the family link, will allow you to restrict content on the devices. However, sometimes it's better to have something a little more effective. What you may not realize is that your mobile phone network if your mobile phone is connected outside, so not through the broadband at your house, then your content is automatically restricted. That means that you cannot access certain adult sites, certain inappropriate things. And it means your children, when they're outside of the house, if they connect to the internet through their data, they're not going to be able to access adult stuff. Now, what happens is that changes when they go home, because your Wi-Fi is designed to be used by an adult by default. That means if you connect a laptop or a tablet or a mobile phone to your home broadband, to your Wi-Fi, it means they can access any content at all. For the last few years, all these providers that you can see on the screen now have offered a system which will manage your internet for you when it comes to content. So for BT, for Sky, TalkTalk, Tesco, PlusNet, Virgin, whoever, what you can actually do is log into their site as a user, as a customer, and you can actually put a restriction on the Wi-Fi in your home. What this will do is once you set it, you will be able to restrict for a certain amount of time or permanently their access to pornographic material, to certain gambling sites, to anything that you may feel could be grossly inappropriate for younger boys and girls. Now, the drawback to that does mean it applies to every device in the household. So if you try and go on, say, the National Lottery website, then there is going to be a bit of a problem in you accessing that if you have turned this system on. So it is a very one-size-fits-all system. You, as the parent or carer, you cannot change what they access, which is why a lot of individuals prefer using, the family link or the family sharing. But it is still a free system that is available for you to use. And there's loads and loads of information about it on the Internet Matters website, internetmatters.org. It is a website that I'm probably going to mention 100 times throughout this chat because it is a brilliant, brilliant bit of kit. Okay. Now, I know I'm racing through these at a fair rate of knots, but what we do have is in the chat, Catherine is very kindly sharing some of the links around some of these apps and some of these systems. The Internet Matters site has guides for you as parents or carers so that you can kind of have a look at it. It's got pictures. You can download it as a PDF. So if you wanted to email it to somebody, you absolutely can do that. And it kind of talks you through the process, how to set it up. So whether it's, this system, that Sky and Virgin have, whether it's Google Family Link, whether it's Netflix, Amazon Prime, even iPlayer, My5, 4OD, all the streaming services do have parental controls so that you can manage the kind of content that they get to see. But there is another thing that it's really important to talk about. Now, I'm quite open and honest. When I go into schools, I'm a bit of a geek. I'm a massive gamer. I love technology, and I don't hide that. It's probably why me and the children get on really, really well, and we talk about a lot of stuff, and it's because of games and gaming. Now, when it comes to apps and app stores and video games, a lot of parents and carers don't always realize that these kind of systems, these games, this entertainment is rated in a very similar way to how films are rated and TV shows are rated when they go out on DVD or Blu-ray or when they come out in the cinema. There are some games that are designed for absolutely everybody to play. They're appropriate for all ages. There are some games that are probably better because of the content to be played by teenagers, and there are some games that are purely designed for an adult audience. The 18+ rating is generally given to extreme horror games, of which I am a fan, but I wouldn't be happy for a lot of children to play it. But also games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. The reason why video games are rated is because the content within them is deemed to be inappropriate because it can be incredibly violent. There can be a lot of language, a lot of discrimination. There is a lot of content within them that if we sat there and looked at it, it could make us feel, well, actually, would I be happy for my children to see it? Now, this PEGI rating system has been in this country for 15 years, probably longer. And it's used all over Europe as a way for you as a parent or carer to make a decision on how appropriate you feel a game is going to be for your child. Now, there is a law in this country, so if it's 12, 16 or 18 rated, they will ask for ID. And actually, absolutely, Georgina, I see your question. I'll pop back to that in a sec. But what it can kind of do is it means that shops should not sell these to anybody underage. Now, the problem with that is that shops are no longer the primary place where individuals will purchase games. A lot of games now have stores. Look at phones and tablets. They have app stores. They have like places like even things like Steam where you can download games onto a PC. You don't actually need to leave your house in order to buy games anymore. All app stores, that's the Apple App Store, that's the Android, Kindle Store, they use the same rating system. So that means any app that you download, if you scroll down, it will show you. Sometimes it's right at the top, sometimes it's towards the bottom where it tells you a little more information about, the size of the app and who's created it, but it uses this same system. So when you look at an app, you can make that decision based on what this PEGI system is kind of telling you. Now, absolutely, as Georgina mentioned in the chat, the problem with games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto is that while we as parents and carers may not always agree with the games that our children play and we can stop it, the same isn't always true with their friends. Now, it's a really difficult thing for me to kind of combat in schools because I've been trying for 10 years plus. As an adult gamer, I don't want to play an 18 rated game and play with guys and girls who are primary age. It's not appropriate. It's a little bit weird. I don't feel comfortable about it because I know the content that is within these games. Now, while as a parent or carer, we cannot always control what happens in other households, we can control what happens in ours. What you can do on video games, and this has been a common question as well from parents and carers, is you can restrict on consoles the maximum age game allowed. So on Xboxes, on PlayStations, on Nintendo Switches, you can use parental controls that you can lock with a password, with a PIN code, with a combination of buttons on a controller, but you can lock it down so that you can say, right, you can play games up to 12, but nothing higher. So even if they borrow the disc and bring it round to your house, put it in the machine, even if it's upstairs in the bedroom, it's not going to work because without that password, they cannot play content that is too old for them, which is a brilliant, brilliant system. It's going to make you massively unpopular, but it is going to mean that you can actively enforce the rules that you have put in place. Now, parental controls on consoles are really, really great because they do lots and lots of things that don't necessarily take away the enjoyment of gaming. If they want to play with their friends, that's totally fine. As long as the game is age appropriate, they can do that. But one of the problems we do have, and one of the questions that has been asked by a few parents and carers is, how can I stop random people talking to my children when they're playing on a headset? Because the risk isn't necessarily from their friends, it's from people that they don't know. So what you can do through these parental controls, and you can do this on the Nintendo Switch, on the Xbox and on the PlayStation, is you can use parental controls to turn off the chat from anybody that is not their friend. So that means only people that they're friends with, that they've made that connection with, a bit like the DMs in TikTok, unless they have that connection, they can't talk to them. Now that leads the question, well, what happens if they just randomly add every single person they come across? Well, the great thing about parental controls on consoles is you can limit it so that they need your password in order to add somebody as a friend, which means you get to manage who they chat to online. So you can start to question, well, if this is the list of your friends, who are these people? If they're not people that they know, they can be removed. And it also means without the password, they can't be added again. It is a really, really great system. What's also even more beneficial, which is a little bit cruel as well, is you can manage screen time on consoles as well. So when you say you can game for an hour, you actually mean an hour, because after that, they need your password to carry on playing. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, oh, I'll come to you in just a second, Kerry. If you want to pop your question in the chat, if you can, and I'll try and answer it as kind of I go on, which is brilliant. It would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that children do mention a lot about, oh, great question, Natalie. I'll pop back to that in a sec. Children mention how every time that they have tea, every time that their parents and carers kind of want them to do something, they can't always leave the game. Now, I know that sounds really confusing to non-gamers, okay? But a lot of games that children will play may take 10, 15, 20 minutes, okay? And it might be with other people on the internet. It might be with their friends. So they might have to be part of that game for 20 minutes because you can't pause a live game online. So what I always say is, to try and be fair on everybody, it's really important to try and give warnings. So what I try and encourage children to do is to kind of break down those barriers with you and have a chat with you and say, look, when it's tea time, give me a 20-minute warning. Then give me a 10-minute warning. Then give me a 5-minute warning. Then tell me it's time to get off. That way they can prepare and come off the game, and it kind of makes them feel a little bit more in control, and it might make them a little less stroppy, which I think is a really important thing, because let's be honest, we don't want our kids to be stroppy at all. Okay. Now, these are all the kind of things that I've been asked about when it comes to parental controls. There is one last thing that I was kind of asked around parental controls, and that is that a lot of routers that you can get, that is the box that kind of plugs to your broadband. Some of those have parental controls built inside them, which you can access through your tablet, through your mobile phone, right? Now, there are instructions on the Internet Matters website, internetmatters.org. I told you I was going to mention it quite a bit. And what you can do is kind of click on that, or you can just Google kind of, how do I change the settings on my router? How do I access my router, right? Now, this is where things get a little bit complicated and where our kids know a lot more than us. What you can kind of do on your router, if you may or may not realize, is you can log into it and do things like change its name, change some settings, change a password. Now, the problem with your router is all the usernames and passwords are exactly the same in every single household until you change it. So for example, and I wrote this down, Sky, if you want to access your Sky router, you just type in, when it asks for your username, the word admin, all lowercase, and the password, imaginatively, is Sky. Now, if your kids know that, any parental controls you put on the router on the box, well, they're going to know how to get around it. So all I'd say is, if you're worried about your kids hacking into the router and turning stuff off, just change that password. It will frustrate them greatly. Okay. Now, I'm going to move on in a sec. And I do appreciate that I've spent quite a bit of time talking about parental controls, but the majority of questions I've kind of been asked have been around those. If you do have anything else that you want to know, and I see, Kerry, you kind of put your hand down, which is great. I hope I've kind of covered that. But if you do have any more questions about parental controls, please stick them in the chat and I'll try and get to them at the questions and answer session right at the end of the session. So thank you very much. I hope that's helped kind of some of you. Okay, what I will say, though, is one of the greatest parental controls that you have, as weird as it sounds, are the kind of the rules that you set in your house. So I just want to kind of give you some of my top tips around how you can manage technology a little better. Okay, now one of the rules that I always encourage, it's one that I have in my house, is like no tech in bedrooms. There's a number of reasons for that. Okay, number one is, if kids have technology in their bedrooms, we're never going to see them. And sometimes we might like spending time with them. And even if they are on their tablets, it's nice to be in kind of the same room as them. But some of the other reasons why technology is best in living areas, that's dining rooms, kitchens, living rooms, is that if an individual, and I'll talk about strangers in a minute, if an individual is trying to kind of trick them, and we use the word grooming, it's less likely to happen in a living room and it's more likely to happen behind closed doors. So what you're basically doing is removing one of those risks by keeping technology in a family-friendly area. It's also important to know that a lot of children that I talk to mention the fact that their technology distracts them. They have their notifications turned on, so at 2 o'clock in the morning, they get a notification, they feel almost duty-bound to kind of check it. So having technology, keeping it downstairs, keeping it out bedrooms, having it charged downstairs, it makes the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue feel better because it's a fire hazard. Yeah, they haven't paid me to say that, but it's an important thing to get across. But having that open door policy as well, if they are in the bedroom during the daytime, it basically kind of reduces that risk that an inappropriate person, which I know is what we as parents and carers all worry about, they're less likely to kind of ask them to do something that's kind of inappropriate. When it comes to apps and games, don't worry about not being an expert. A lot of people kind of mention, well, how do I gauge whether a new game is like acceptable or okay? Now, obviously, I mentioned the PEGI ratings. The PEGI ratings are a great way because it's done by an organization. It's not done by the app stores. It's not done by the developers. It's done by an organization that can kind of make you feel a little more comfortable about kind of the apps and games that they play. But if you're unsure about this, and I have to do this every day, just ask them. What's that app? What does it do? Why don't you show me? If they want to use a new app, sit and learn about it together. It's a great way to educate both people. And if it's a social media app, it means that you can sit there and ask questions like, well, can you put your account on private? What would be okay to share? If somebody sent you a friend request, what would you do and why? And it just means you're starting that kind of conversation. Now, one of the more challenging things that I get asked is about checking your children's messages. Okay. Now, and this, there is no right or wrong answer to this. What I will say is a lot of children and young people I meet, they tell me quite openly that their parents and carers check their messages. Okay. A lot of their friends are quite shocked because sometimes they might feel, well, why? Now, I always explain this to children that sometimes parents and carers will check messages because they'll notice a change in behavior and they want to know if it's related to an argument that's ongoing at school, something like that. Or sometimes it's because as parents and carers, we want to know who our children are talking to, because again, that's where the risk comes from. Now, there is no minimum age or maximum age when you should kind of be checking or kind of not checking. But what I do think is important is that you have a conversation with them and explain why. If they are 13, 14, 15 years old, then I'd understand there's massive resistance and they're kind of getting to that age where sometimes you need to give them that little bit of trust. It's kind of like, would you sit and listen to their phone calls? Some parents and carers would say, yeah, up until they're like 23, I'd want to do that. I get that. But sometimes it's about thinking, how would we have felt when we were kind of their age? If they're younger, if they're primary age, I'd probably say up to year 7, I think it's okay and acceptable to check their messages, but it's about making them understand why. You can't just turn around and say, because I pay the bill. It's more like, I'm doing this because I want to make sure that you're being safe. And if you're unhappy, if something is kind of kicking off at school, if somebody's trying to trick you, I just want to know. And sometimes that has to be something that you agree before you give them the device and say, up until the point that I say no, I am going to be checking this device. And it's about making them understand. And that's why it's important to discuss and agree some boundaries. Okay. But the other thing that I will say is that some rules should apply to everybody. Now, this is not like a whinge. I'm not like finger pointing or having a go at anybody. I'm just relaying what children kind of tell me. Because I ask kids, how many of you have been told by your grown-ups that you stare at a screen too much? And they all kind of put their hand up, right? And then I ask them, how many of you would say your grown-ups stare at a screen too much? And they all put their hand up, only a little bit quicker. The thing that I'm saying is that we are, as adults, we're allowed to look at our phones. We are the rule setters, okay? But it is about kind of finding that balance, isn't it? That if we say, well, no phones at the dinner table, then we should probably follow that rules and set a really, really good example. If we want our children to behave like a certain way, then we need to kind of behave a certain way as well. Okay. Now, before I move on, I have seen, thank you, a couple of people, Sandra and Emmanuel, you kind of both asked two really good questions. Now, Sandra, what I will say is the password override button, just for anybody that doesn't know, is some devices will let you, instead of typing in the code, you can push a button on the back of the router, you can push a button on an Xbox or flip a switch on your phone and it will automatically connect to your router. Some routers, if you log into the box itself, so again, have a look on your provider's website. How do I log into my router? Yeah, sometimes you can turn that off, which is a really good feature, or just tape it up. It's not a system that is necessarily going to be there all the time, but it is something you can kind of turn off. And kids, it's just kids are really crafty. Now, Emmanuel asked a really good question. What's the most appropriate age to allow a child to own a mobile phone? Now, again, I'd love to say this age, boom, done, but it's not that easy. It is down to, I suppose the question is why? Why do they want a mobile phone? Now, mostly kids say, I want a mobile phone because I kind of want to play games and I want apps. Okay. Whereas as grown-ups, we generally want them to have a mobile phone because when they're out and about on their own, we want them to be able to not only contact us, but we want to be able to contact them. One of our, and this is like personal, so this is like my personal view, because professionally, it's a really difficult question to answer because we all have very different views and values. Personally, I say year 6 because that's generally the age when they're starting to develop a little more freedom. By the time they get to year 7, they're probably going to be walking to school on their own. They're going to be biking to school. They're going to be going on a bus. And it's about encouraging them to get used to kind of accessing those kind of devices so that they know how to use it. And bits and pieces like that. So I'd probably say like roundabout, that's probably the age that I'd suggest, but it's more personal, my personal view, rather than, you know, saying this is kind of the age. But it's something to discuss with your children. We survived for 20 odd years as kids without mobile phones. They can, but it does, as adults, it does give us a little bit of peace of mind. And one of the things that we do as a family is we use, there's an app, and again, this is not a recommendation, it's just kind of a personal preference. There's an app called Life 360, and what that will allow you to do is it's almost like a location app. So as a family, we've all agreed to basically stalk each other through the internet. But it's just like gives us all a bit of peace of mind so that we know where everybody is. Because me, on any given day, I'm halfway across the county. And things like Apple, they have a similar system called Find My Friends. Okay. Now, again, great question about Discord. Discord is a bit like WhatsApp, but it's designed for gamers. What I can kind of, Kerry, that's a brilliant question. I'll come to that in a sec. What we can kind of do is Discord does come with some form of parental features. So you can kind of restrict what they can access. So you can set ages. You can also, it has a chat filter, so it can turn off some of the more inappropriate language. But again, it's a bit like WhatsApp. You could use it and get added to the groups, but again, it's not 100% method. A lot of the time, the best way to monitor is to kind of just have a quick check and have a look. But again, it depends on the age. Or just get them to sit down and show you and talk you through it and the kind of things that they are looking at. And the servers, which is kind of what it's called in Discord, the chats that they're kind of part of. So I think like chatting, looking and using some of the restrictions that come in place. But apps like Discord and WhatsApp as messaging apps, they're very, very difficult to kind of restrict without losing like the core function of kind of the app. Now, Kerry's mentioned something that has been mentioned to me a couple of times by a friend, and that is about kids altering their phone time to bypass timed restrictions. Now, what you may not realize is that when you set time limits, the way that kids get around it is by altering the time zone that their phone is in, right? I mean, literally, you could not make this up, okay? What you can do is through the restriction, through family pairing, through family sharing, and through the family link, is you can stop them changing any of the system settings. So they cannot alter the time, and you can kind of lock it with a password. That would kind of be the best bit. And Georgina, I mean, and I get what you say, and I am completely on your side when it comes to, as a parent or carer, it is your choice. Just like what games they play, it is your choice what phone they have. And like a 3310's indestructible. Like smartphones, they break them. Yeah, they drop them. It happens. 3310's more likely to break the pavement than it is to break the kind of phone. But it is about getting them to understand it. Yeah, smartphones do come with, and Snake, absolutely, Catherine. Snake's an amazing game, right? But smartphones do come with their own set of issues because of the kind of stuff that you access, and it can kind of be, it's kind of like an anchor, isn't it? It's a bit of a tether, and you can never kind of escape it. Our kids, when they were younger, they did have phones with buttons, as you know, back in the old days, as a way to encourage them. That was what they got when they got in year 6, because it was a way for them to contact people, because at that age, that's kind of what they need. It doesn't make you popular, I appreciate that, but it is, as a family, it's your personal preference. Okay. I am going to move on from parental controls, but like I say, I'm not going to be going anywhere. I will be here at the end to kind of chat about any other things. But please, Internet Matters is such a great site. If you want to know anything, even things like Discord, what parental controls are there, Internet Matters is the place to go. And I'm just going to ask Catherine if you're okay to, again, just put in the chat that link to the Internet Matters parental control section. Okay. Now, this is kind of where things kind of change a little bit, because one of the things that, oh, sorry, Jake's got his hand up. Jake, if you want to pop it in the chat, if that's all right, and I'll come back to that in just a sec. But I do want to kind of just move on and have a quick chat about something that kind of really worries us. Now, as adults, we worry about strangers on the internet. And I know as an adult, we don't always see strangers the same way that our children do, right? Now, the definition of a stranger is it's just somebody that we don't know. And like 20, 30 years ago, it was always some old man that drove a banged up car and offered us sweets. Now, strangers, we can kind of get in touch with them through the internet. They can talk to us, I mean, all of us, in our homes, you know, when we're kind of out and about. So I want to kind of show you some of the things that we teach children about something called grooming. That is where an individual will try and build up a relationship with you, but with a view to, well, just unpleasant and inappropriate behavior towards them. Okay, so the two questions that we always ask children is, number one, how many of them have never lied on the internet? Now, bear in mind that some children we meet who are 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, they use apps like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. They are lying about their age because you should be 13 to use this. Now, it's 13 because of data protection laws. That's probably a conversation for another time. But one of the things you may not realize is this next question, kids are really good at answering. Because we say, well, how would you spot someone who is lying to you? Now, I can honestly say that your children who I've met in, and we talk about this at year 7 and 8, they're really, really good at spotting the signs of an older person pretending to be younger, because it'll be the language. It'd be the way they type stuff. They can't post pictures. They can't chat on a video, right? Now, it's not 100% effective because, as we know by looking at the news, individuals do still get tricked, and that's adults as well as children and young people. But I kind of wanted to show you how we talk to children about spotting the signs of somebody that's trying to groom them. So this is one of the slides that we show year 7 and 8 students. And it's kind of like using imagery as a light-hearted way to show you some of the tactics that individuals will kind of use against them online. So what we try and teach kids is to look for behaviors. Now, things like flattery, while flattery makes us feel good, flattery can also make us feel weird and uncomfortable. I'm not saying if a person says something nice or if they like all your posts that they're a horrible person and that they're trying to trick you. But what I am saying is that if a complete stranger starts liking every single picture and everything they say is nice, that sometimes that can be a little bit creepy. It can be especially creepy if that individual identifies as somebody who's 17, 18, 19 years old, and the individual they're talking to is 11 or 12. It's just trying to sow that seed that, depending on who they are, flattery can be a bit of a creepy thing. But things like too good to be true, these are when somebody might say, oh, I'll give you free Robux, I'll give you free V-Bucks, if you click on this link and pay £2, I'll re-deliver your Amazon package, or I'm your bank. Somebody's tried to steal your money, I'm here to protect it, you just need to read that code that I've just texted you. Things that are too good to be true trick adults more than they trick guys and girls. So for me, I try and get children to think, if they're on the internet with 3.5 billion other people, and 1 billion people go on TikTok every month, what are the chances that that one person that is not only your age, that lives in the same country as you, that likes everything you like, what is the likelihood that they're going to send you a message randomly through an app? What is the chances that you're going to meet your soulmate online? And I do apply this to adults as well, because through things like online dating, you know, a lot of adults kind of get tricked. But it's the bottom two that I kind of worry about the most, because they're the ones that kind of cause the harm to children and young people. Bribery and threats. Bribery, obviously, our kids are experts because they successfully bribe us all the time. Okay. But the one that sits in between bribery and threats is something we call blackmail. And that's kind of the thing that I worry about the most. Because when we talk to children about blackmail, they understand that people can threaten you. They can try and use something against you, whether it's your personal information. I know where you live. I'm going to come round and see you. I know where you go to school. I'm going to come to your school. Now, most of the time, that individual is probably not going to get in a car and drive 200 miles to their house or their school. But remember, if children are in their bedroom on their own and an individual on the internet is saying threatening and horrible things to them, it can sometimes make them feel that they have to kind of do what they say. Now, grooming can occur through gaming sites, it can occur through social media, it can happen to absolutely anybody. And Catherine is posting some links in the chat to some places where you can learn a bit of information, because we could have 4 hours and we still wouldn't talk about this enough. Okay, so it's important to remember that there are dangerous strangers out there. And yes, some of them might pretend to be their age, but some of these dangerous strangers may not pretend to be somebody different. They may be 20, 25, younger than what we've taught our children to kind of look for, because we teach our children that a dangerous stranger will pretend to be their age. They can spot that. They can't always see the risk in other places. Some of the other things that I try and encourage children to spot are anybody asking to keep a conversation quiet, anybody that wants to know who's in the house. They're just kind of what I class as weird questions. Weird questions are, where are you? What are you doing? Are you in your bedroom? Weird questions are also, how old are you? Where do you live? Where do you go to school? Weird questions are also, can you send me a picture? Send us a selfie. I want to know what you look like. And it's about getting our children to identify that even though they're talking to a stranger on the internet, they can feel safe because they're at home. Doesn't necessarily mean that stranger's a nice person. And the bit that always worries me about that kind of blackmail side is that they're made to feel that it's their fault. If somebody on the internet tricks them, what they're going to do is say, well, it's down to you. You shouldn't have accepted my friend request. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done that. And what it does is minimize the responsibility that the offender, the abuser, should take, and it places it all on our child. Now, the hardest thing that I'm going to tell you is that obviously, you know, there are places you can go to get help. There's an organization called CEOP. They are a police-led child protection organization. And what they do is they have a big red button on a website called thinkyouknow.co.uk. And you can kind of go on there. You can report through that website, look, something has kind of happened. An individual is talking to my child in a sexually inappropriate way. I'm worried about their safety. Your children can use that button, and we do tell them in secondary school, this button exists to keep you safe. But it's a really difficult thing because a lot of children worry about our reaction and how we are going to manage that. Now, Think You Know, the parent section has a bit that talks about, like a whole article about how you as a parent or carer can kind of do the unthinkable, and that's kind of manage your own emotions if you ever find out that, you know, that something like this has kind of happened, it does give you a lot of information on some of the signs that you can spot. A lot of them are associated with, you know, your typical adolescent behavior, being secretive, being moody, being grumpy. Okay. But what we always say is that it's about ensuring that children are open and honest, and communication. When it comes to online safety, communication is key, absolutely key. Our children need to feel that they can come to us and talk, and if they can't, then I kind of get that, because they might be embarrassed, they might be worried. So let's find somebody that they can, whether it's that cool aunt or uncle, whether it's somewhere like Childline. You know, all your kids know Childline's number because they probably threaten you with it on a daily basis. I know mine do. I'm just happy they know the number, so that if they need help, there's kind of somebody there. So when it comes to things like grooming, it is probably as grown-ups, one of our biggest fears about being on the internet. We can't always protect our children from strangers, but it's about getting our children to see strangers on the internet the same way we see strangers in the real world. It doesn't make them a bad person if they don't know them, but it doesn't make them good either. And as we know, people on the internet don't always share the truthful side of their life, because let's be honest, our friends don't, do they? Yeah, so it's about getting them to be more questioning and a little less trusting. Yeah, and try and make sure that they know there's places to go. Okay. Now there is one more thing that I'm going to mention. I appreciate you all being here. I know that it's coming up to 7:30, and some of you may have to leave because we're all busy people and we've got kids to put to bed. I'm not going anywhere, just to warn you. But there's one last thing that I kind of want to mention. Something we're talking about in schools at the moment, and one of the questions that did kind of come up, and that's about bullying online. Okay, now we use the word malicious communication at the moment because there is a law that kind of covers this. If you're saying something that's, you know, grossly offensive or causes anxiety and distress, there's a chance that it may be against the law. That can include, you know, a variety of things, which can be such as threatening to kill somebody, threatening to harm them, damage their property. What we're finding at the moment is some students in schools are getting themselves into trouble because they're creating fake TikTok accounts, or they're spreading rumors about teachers in school, and of course teachers kind of find out. So group chats and bullying is one of the things that can have quite a profound impact on individuals. So I kind of want to show you some of the things that we're reminding children about at the moment, because in primary schools and secondary schools, we're finding group chats especially are causing problems. And it's these two things, right? Now, I'll give you some top tips on how your children can manage bullying, but it's really important that we kind of encourage our children to see the internet as being a little more permanent and no different to the real world. A lot of kids, like I said, are quite shocked when they find out their grown-ups or their friends' grown-ups are looking at their kind of chats, because they're a little bit embarrassed about some of the stuff that they're writing. And I always say, well, anything you write on the internet, if I can see it on my screen, I can kind of save a copy. So only write something that you are happy for everybody to see. That includes your grandma. So one of the things that we've been promoting over the last couple of years is the grandma rule. Sounds a bit weird, but it's how I live my life online. I never post anything that I wouldn't be happy for my grandma, you know, for that cool aunt or uncle, you know, for the head teacher, for parents and carers. I wouldn't say anything that I'm not happy for them to see. Now, Hannah, you mentioned a really, really great thing, and that is that some apps, mainly Snapchat, if you take a screenshot, which is sometimes there's just two buttons, it's sometimes the volume up and the home button on your phone, or the volume down and your home button, depending on your phone. That's something to Google. But you can push two buttons on your phone and it will take a screenshot of whatever appears on your screen. Snapchat has a feature that will tell the other person that that has been done. Now, there are ways around that, because we talk to kids about a lot of stuff. They talk to us about a lot of stuff. Kids know ways around that feature. But if you take a screenshot, I believe WhatsApp and Instagram, you can turn that feature on certain message types that you send, but it will tell the other person. Now, the way I always say is, if you know that person has taken a screenshot, what can you do about it? And the answer is, apart from talk to them, there's not a lot. Which is why I always say this is so important. Never share anything that you are not happy for somebody to screenshot. Because if somebody does, you're the one that kind of has to justify it, okay? Now, this is true for adults as well, because I'm part of a group on Facebook where I live, and I've got to be honest, the way that adults talk to each other is nothing short of disgusting. I've seen the comments on articles that, you know, are posted from local news, Facebook accounts, and the way that people will argue about what shade of blue the sky is, yeah, whether it's recycle bins or parking or fireworks. What I think is important is that sometimes as adults we don't always show an appropriate way to communicate, and the European Championship showed that with all the racist abuse that was directed at 3 footballers, and it's kind of just, we're not doing ourselves any favor. If we can encourage our children to be better people online, and if we can be better people online, then I think, you know, we're going to go a long way to make the internet a better place. But you know what? I've been doing this for 10 years, and I can honestly tell you that online abuse is not going anywhere. As we've seen, it is getting a little bit worse because people feel they can talk however they want online, and we're seeing that especially in schools at the moment. These are the 5 things that I always try and get across to everybody of any age. This is how you can manage online abuse. Now, not stop it, because we can't always stop it. Things like Instagram, they're trying to use artificial intelligence to kind of encourage people to think a little more about the stuff that they're saying. But again, if people are in a bad mood, if they want to upset people, and we have to remember there are some people out there that just want to upset people, they don't always care. Then we have to accept that these are some of the things that can help us deal with it, but then we still need to deal with the emotional side and the impact that it has as well. Now, the top one's really hard because, as you'll find on most groups, most adults and most children and young people, if somebody kind of have a go, it's human nature to kind of have a go back. So try not to respond is a really difficult thing. But it's the most important, because as soon as you respond, you kind of started a conversation, and that's not ideal. Saving a copy is really important. Police tell us don't delete the message. No, thank you. I do appreciate if anybody has to go. I'll keep talking. I'm still here, but thank you so much for attending. The rest will be on YouTube. Police are kind of saying that if somebody writes something, then you need to not only save a copy, but don't delete it, because then what they can do is kind of trace it kind of through the app. They can get in touch with these companies and track down the kind of the individuals. Reporting, as I mentioned, you know, if you see something inappropriate on YouTube or TikTok, you can kind of report it. And what you can kind of do is that lets the app know, so that then they can kind of get rid of it and manage it themselves. But blocking by far is the most important thing that you can do, because by pushing that block button, it means that they can't talk to you, they can't send you a message, they can't see your profile. A lot of kids feel they can't do that because they want to know what people are saying, and it's just going to make them feel even worse. Now, talking about it is the really difficult bit, because, you know, kids are sometimes secretive. They don't always want to tell us what's going on, especially if it's bad, because they might be embarrassed. So getting them to talk to us is about building up that kind of relationship, encouraging, look, what do you like, what don't you like, and kind of just kind of help them that way. Okay. Now, I know that's been kind of like a whirlwind tour. We spent a lot of time on parental controls because I know that's what a lot of the questions were about. But I am going to take this opportunity to kind of throw up again the Internet Matters web link, internetmatters.org. I don't get paid any commission for advertising them, just before anybody asks, but it is just such a fantastic service. And I do want you to kind of make sure that you know that these sites are kind of available. Catherine in the chat is kind of putting in, she has been putting in some links. Feel free to kind of like scroll through and click on them. One of the things that we are asking is, one of the links she's put up is for feedback. This is the first time we've done a Q&A session like this. You know, the last one was just a live stream on YouTube, so it was just me kind of sat there talking, really. And I do appreciate everybody that's kind of asked a question. and for engaging with me really well. It's been absolutely brilliant. Please give us our feedback. We are looking to run these a little more regularly, so we're hoping this isn't a once-off. But please tell us, help us shape this to make sure it's beneficial to you. And what I will say is there's also a link to a YouTube channel in there. The Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children Partnership, the LSCP, has a YouTube channel, and we've created some videos around things like parental controls, a little bit about grooming, about sexting, which is an issue we're experiencing in secondary schools, about group chats as well and how to manage. Catherine has read my mind and just put the group chat link in there. And I do want to say thank you very much. So I'm going to stay on. I appreciate some of you are going to have to go, and I've eaten into your family time, and I do apologize. But thank you so much. We are going to stick this on YouTube over the next couple of days. And I'm going to wait around if there are any questions. I know Lisa's got a hand up. If you want to stick your questions in the chat, and then we'll I can have a chat with you and kind of share what I know or how I can help. But for everybody else, get yourselves off. Thank you so much.
Dan, you may need to activate the microphones because
I might need to activate the mic.
Blocked. They couldn't.
This is the joys of modern technology.
Yeah, so we had a question.
I'm gonna allow the microphones. I'm just gonna allow the microphones.
Yeah, we had a question around the PEGI rating of Fortnite, but I replied to that one that it's 12.
Oh yeah, Fortnite is 12. It's because although it's violent, it's cartoony, the violence, so that's why it's got a PEGI rating of 12. And it's less intense. It's just more irritating, but a lot of people still play it. I played it a few times, I've got to admit. So excellent. So yeah, I'm still here and chatting. Thank you, everybody.
If anyone has a question, if they want to put their hand up, then obviously we can activate the microphones and then you can
excellent. I've done the activating the microphone bit from my end. If you're all right, Catherine, to do the individual activating microphones. And if somebody does have a question, there is a virtual hand system. It's sometimes at the top, it says raise hand. And if you push it, it will show us a virtual hand. So we know that you want to ask a question. There's about 25 people still left in here. So as long as you're happy for us all to have a bit of a chat about it, then that's okay. So if anybody wants to ask a question, stick your hand up, virtual hand, and we can kind of do that. Or stick it in the chat, either way. And if not, that's totally fine. I talk a lot. Awkward silences. I have to fill them with noise. So now, anybody with a hand? No, I think everybody's slowly leaving. And that's totally okay. We'll stick this on YouTube. Thank you. No, thank you very much. It's been lovely to meet everybody virtually. I hope we get to see each other in the real world, because if you see me, I don't hide very well. Come and ask me a question. Except when I buy milk, because normally it's because I need coffee, so that might be my priority. But I just want to make sure everybody knows what they want to know. That's a very good question.
Email me.
Email Catherine Smith. Can I give your email out? We're going to crop this at the end of the video, so it's not.
Wait a minute, I'll put in the chat.
I'll edit the video so that
everybody with the actual link to the event. Like everyone's got my email address.
What we will do is this event was organised obviously through Eventbrite, and what I'll do is I'll get in touch with our contact that works for Lincolnshire County Council. We do have all your emails, so what we can do is a lot of these links, I think, give us a couple of days, because we do spend a lot of time in schools, but we will make sure that we get all this information out to you. So that you can kind of do it. We do go into schools. That is our primary focus. It's currently year 6s, and all the secondary schools have 2 dates with us a year. It's not just me. There's lots of other agencies that come in to talk about like drugs and alcohol, you know, the fire service go in, road safety. Yeah, there's our e-safety sessions for year sixes. I've been in the school today. I do really enjoy talking to the year sixes. They're so enthusiastic. And then when they get to secondary age, they're not so enthusiastic, but I still like talking to them as well. So, which is brilliant. So yeah, any other questions, ladies and gents? Oh, and Catherine's just, you know,
on it. I'm all over it.
No, brilliant. Thank you. I'm glad I've helped. I hope you found it useful. And we will let you know when we do another one. But spread the word.